I think it's so cool when you can make a connection with somebody else. We do that with our kids, our spouse, our friends, our co-workers, our barista, all kinds of different people that we love to make a connection with. Around our church and our staff, I always have I know a person, I got a guy. I don't know if you know a person like that. Like, Jason, we need somebody to do, some help with plumbing. Do you know somebody? I'm like, yeah, I know a guy. Like, whatever, we need to build the deck, I need to fix my kitchen, I need to put in new floors, I need to fix the wall. Now, those are all Mikey, but I know a guy. Okay, that's all the same guy, but I know a guy. I got a guy here at our church, sometimes people be like, hey, how did you guys get, a big thing, a big, freezer cooler of Dippin' Dots for, your kids' stuff? I'm like, because I know a guy. I got a Dippin' Dots guy, here. I don't know if you know. We got a guy who's a big national guy for Dippin' Dots who goes to our services, so I got a guy. That's what connections are so cool, because stuff happens that wouldn't have happened without them. So for example, I was at a daddy-daughter dance with Dippin' Dots guy, and while I was with him, we met this other guy who was he was there. If you've never been to a daddy-daughter dance at elementary school, what it looks like is a bunch of daughters dancing and dads awkwardly standing around in a big circle. And so I walked to this guy and I was like, hey man, what do you do? And he was like, oh, I make lightsabers. And I was like, shut your mouth. What did you just say? And he started scrolling through his phone, showing me lightsabers he'd made and like props for Marvel movies. And we were standing in a school in Rowlett. I'm between Dippin' Dots and Marvel guy. I'm like, normally I've got the coolest job in the room, but I'm going, man, how do you beat these guys? This is amazing. Connections are powerful. And at Easter, we celebrate an incredible connection. We celebrate connection with Jesus Christ through his resurrection from the grave. Amen. It's an incredible moment. Now, I need y'all to get a lot more excited this morning. 9 o'clock service, some of y'all, I know this is a little early for you. You normally come to 9:30. We robbed you of 30 minutes of your sleep. So I apologize in advance. But can I just, when we wake up right now, can I just get a good amen this morning? Come on. There we go. Don't be afraid to wake up today. Connections are important, okay? And on the very first Easter, we see Jesus make some powerful connections. I want you to imagine the first Easter and what it must have been like. On Easter Sunday morning, the people that were there, that had seen what had happened, they had still not gotten over Friday. The followers of Jesus are trying to put their lives back together and go, where do we go from here? What's next? Crucifixions and sealed tombs have a way of crushing our hopes. And lots of stories were circulating that morning. There was no guard at the tomb. Someone stole the body. The stone had been rolled away. And in that moment, God beams Jesus in Star Trek style into a conversation with two guys who are arguing about this very moment. This is Easter Sunday morning in Luke chapter 22, and two guys are leaving Jerusalem, having seen everything that just happened, walking to a place called Emmaus, 7 miles away. It's a long walk, an uneven, hilly terrain. It's going to take a while. And while they're walking, they're arguing about everything that has just happened. And so we're going to peek in on their Easter Sunday, the very first Easter. In verse 15 of Luke 22, it says, while they were discussing and arguing, Jesus himself came near and began to walk along with them. That seems awkward. Have you ever walked up on people who are talking about you? I did. Okay, no joke. This happened to me the other day. I was at Starbucks. And I was getting my coffee. I know my barista's there at our local Starbucks. Sean and Nate. Nate's always the guy that makes my coffee. He makes it with love. It's powerful. And so I'm in there and I'm sitting down and I hear these two ladies start talking about having gone to, it's Monday morning, they were talking about having gone to church yesterday. And guess what church they had attended? Crossroads. So I hear them talk about Crossroads. So my ears, I'm like, I don't want to be eavesdropping, but I do want to hear what's about to be said. And so I'm kind of leaning in. And they're like, oh, so welcoming. And I'm like, great. They're like, that's the nicest church I've ever been in. I was like, that's right, son, come on. And they're talking about it. They were saying how good, the music was great. And then they said something about the preaching. And I was like, come on. Let's hear what you got. Yeah. And the other lady goes, Now, I had not engaged in the conversation until that moment. And I turned around and said, you will not talk about Wes that way. That's my bro. I I defend my brother, okay? We won't talk, I assume they're, no, okay, do whatever. Jesus walks up, they're talking about it. In verse 16 it says, he began to walk along with them, but they were kept from recognizing him. So for some reason they could not see who he was. And that was probably a supernatural thing, but here's what's weird is they had heard Jesus teach, they had seen him do miracles, but they couldn't see him. And I think the truth is that discouragement oftentimes for a lot of us even today can keep us from being able to see Jesus correctly. As a matter of fact, when hope is buried, our vision gets real blurry. We can't see it. And that's their Sunday. Their hope has been buried, their dreams have been buried, their joy has been buried. And you see that in verse 17. It says, then he asked them, Jesus is talking, what is the dispute that you're having with each other as you're walking? And they stopped walking and looked discouraged. They looked back at him and they said this. The one named Cleopas answered him, are you the only visitor in Jerusalem that doesn't know what's happened in these days? See, we need to understand, while crucifixion was normal, there was something unique about the crucifixion of Jesus that got everyone's attention. The whole city knew what was going on. They said, how'd you get out of Jerusalem and not know? It seems impossible. It was what everyone was talking about. And Jesus says, what things? He asked them. So they said to him, the things concerning Jesus of Nazareth, who was a powerful prophet in action and speech before God and all the people, and how our chief priests and leaders handed him over to be sentenced to death, and they crucified him. Like they're going, like, we had incredibly high hopes. We had high expectations, and now we're hopeless. Like, you ever had that moment where you had such high expectations, such high hopes, and then they got crushed? If you're a Dallas sports fan, it happens to you multiple times a year. Like, even right now, I know we got the Stars, and we're all going, just get out of round one. Just get out of round one. Like, if you're a Cowboys fan, forget about it. I mean, like it's just, you fear, like, I have hope, and here we go again. It just happens. This is happening, I'm a big sports fan. And so of my 3 kids, the most aggressive of my 3 children was up here singing a minute ago. Her name is Caitlin. And when Caitlin was little, she was feisty. Like, she's that independent spirit. She would like hit her brother with a baseball bat and stuff like that. And we were we're like, oh, don't hit your brother. But the other part of me is like, she is going to be my dream come true. My sports athlete. That's her. It's going to happen. And then I put her in soccer. And I thought, here it is. And they asked me, do we want to coach? And I was like, of course I want to coach. This is going to be another Brady Belichick dynasty that we're about to create. I didn't even believe soccer was a sport at that moment. And I thought, we're going to make it one. And I got Caitlin into soccer. And in the very first game, I put her on the field. And I was like, oh, here it is. This is going to be the moment they write in the history books, the moment that it was started. They're going to show film later when she goes to, I don't even know if soccer has a Hall of Fame. I don't know if there's any good athletes in there, but they have this thing. And they put her, and I was like, oh, it's going to be amazing. And she's going to look, and unlike everybody else that goes, hi, Mom, she's going to be the one that goes, hi, Dad. And I'm going to be like, yes, we made it. And I put her out on the field, and I was like, here it is. And a few minutes into the game was intense. I was into it because the kids were 5. And I was just like, let's get this, let's do this. And I look, and there's this big hole in the field, like somebody's missing them. What's going on? And I'm like counting my kids. I'm like, I got a kid not on the field. I didn't have subs. I'm like, where is the who's missing? And my wife on the other side of the field is looking at me going like, turn around. And I'm like, and Caitlin is sitting on the bench, having taken herself out of the game, drinking a juice box. And I said, Caitlin, get in! And she said, Daddy, I got sweaty. My hopes were so high! And they died that day. She went on to do what she does with theater and music, and it's awesome. But we all know what those moments feel like. There's this, everything's going great, and then something changes. Like, it can crush a day. Like, you've had small moments of this where you turn the key and your car won't start, and you just know that's about to wreck your day. There's no Wi-Fi. Or one of the worst atrocities ever, you leave Sonic and they got your drink order wrong. And you go, this is going to kill me. Or you pour a bowl of cereal and realize there's no milk. Oh, did you hear the visceral reaction? Like, there are people that were wronged by that today. Like, you can feel it. But then there's bigger ones. When you lost the job and you didn't see it coming. Or you're going to look for engagement rings, but the next message you get is, we should probably see other people. Or the person you thought would love you the most for the longest looks at you and says, I've been having an affair. Or the doctor says the words that no one wants to hear. It's cancer. Or you get a knock on your door, or a call on your cell phone from a police officer or a chaplain or a friend. It says your 18-year-old has just died in a car accident. High hopes, crushed, and you can't breathe. Like it just sucks all the air out of your body. And it sucks all the hope out of your life, and you're gasping to breathe. That's what these two men are experiencing this morning. They have no breath. They have no hope. Just days before, Jerusalem had welcomed Jesus in as a conquering hero. They thought this is the moment where everything is going to go right. But from Thursday night to Friday morning, in one day, it all went dark. And now they can't breathe. Well, they continued to talk to Jesus in verse 20. They said, our chief priests and leaders handed him over to be sentenced to death, and they crucified him. But we had hoped that he was the one who was about to redeem Israel. Did you hear it? We had hoped. I had hoped that the relationship was finally going to go somewhere. I had hoped that the tumor was shrinking. I had hoped that my child was going to make better decisions. I had hoped that promotion was going to be mine. Like we've all had, I had hoped moments. This wasn't what they had hoped for. They thought something else was going to happen. But this conversation is going to take a drastic turn because Jesus speaks up now. And I love how gentle he enters into the conversation. How foolish are you? Hey, idiots. This is weird. He just brings it. How foolish are you? And then he says, how slow to believe all that the prophets have spoken. Wasn't it necessary for the Messiah to suffer? That these things and enter into his glory? Then beginning with Moses and all the prophets, he interpreted for them the things concerning himself. See, Jesus understands something so vital, that the cure for disappointment is a changed perspective. And so he's going to change perspective. He's going to say, I think you've forgotten how this works. So let me go back to Moses. Remember when Moses brought everybody out of Israel? And then they got to the Red Sea? And they had a giant sea to their front and an army coming to kill them to their back. And everything seemed hopeless. Remember when Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego were told, if you don't bow to a false god, we'll throw you into the fire? And then they're there at the mouth of this furnace. And in that moment, they felt hopeless. You remember when David's a 12-year-old boy when he slays Goliath. And the only reason he's there to begin with is because Dad sent him on a cheese run to see his older brothers. And so he goes to bring some cheese. And there's an enemy standing in the field going, bring out your best. And the entire army of Israel is going, we're too afraid to go out there. And a 12-year-old says, I got this. And he walks out onto the field with a sling and stones. And the rest of Israel was probably going, we are hopeless. Or Ezekiel in the Old Testament is surrounded by a foreign army and there's no hope for escape. Or Daniel was thrown into a lion's den where people are supposed to be torn to shreds. And everything feels hopeless. But they miss something about every one of those moments. And it's the moment they're missing on Easter Sunday morning, that when we are facing hopelessness, hope erupts from God. Yes. This moment comes because our greatest impossibilities have always been God's platform for hope. He brings hope when we see it the least. When the situation feels impossible, God displays our hope. And it gets big. See, Jesus is trying to point them to something powerful. See, we need to understand and be reminded, Jesus was not plan B. Yeah. He was always plan A. Jesus coming on the cross was always the plan. Jesus faces hopelessness and brings hope, but he's not facing his hopelessness, he's facing yours. Yeah. And on the cross, He stares down your hopelessness, and on the first Easter, he comes out of the tomb with hope for you. That's what happens. We are about to have a moment, and Jesus knows that where hope is going to come alive like never before. Everyone else is moving away from the story of the cross. Jesus is telling us that he went there on purpose. It was going to be a big day of displayed hope. This was the moment that God wanted more than anyone else. It was a day that was going to change everything. Like, we've had those moments, right? Like on way smaller scales. There are moments in your life that when they happened, you were like, that will change my life forever. The first time that you had queso, that happened to you. Like, you've eaten cheese in cube or sliced form, and you're like, it's pretty good. And somebody melted and put Rotel in it, and you're like, oh my gosh! And it changed your world. If you're wearing glasses or contact lenses, it is literally considered one of the greatest historical achievements when optical lenses came into existence. Otherwise, most of you would be looking up here going, Jason's just a big blur. It changed things. When penicillin was accidentally discovered, lives were saved and continue to this day to be saved. When cell phones came out, it changed how we communicate as a culture, as a people. And they're saying in 2019 that the greatest technological advancement is going to be a thing called the Babel earbuds. What they do is amazing. As you wear them into foreign countries, they translate in real time from whatever language you're hearing into your language. It's an amazing invention. We constantly in our life see these days that change the way that everything functions. And what we need to understand is that on this one day, this Easter, one day, it changed everything. And not just for us to gather as a church. Like, I think sometimes we forget everything that hinged on an empty tomb. Like, for example, hospitals. Hospitals were started by people who were excited about the hope in Christ, and they began to help people. When everyone else was running away from plagues and diseases, Christian people ran towards it, and we had hospitals created. When everybody else was saying, I don't know what to do about educating these kids, it were Christ followers who created schools first. Most of the universities that have been around for hundreds of years were started by Christ followers. Orphanages, homeless shelters, food pantries, feeding centers, those places were all launched by the Christian people with the hope of resurrection in their heart, moving towards the world to give them hope. Without that one day, we don't have any hope. Without that one day, you're sitting in this room and everything you've staked your life on is a lie. You're wasting your time. Without that day, you're guilty of your sins forever. You've got no hope. Which means that you will be without heaven. That means that this life is the most you can hope for without Easter. You'll be without grace, without freedom, and without purpose. But please listen to me, Crossroads. Hopelessness will never have the last word on a story that God writes. It is never going to be the thing that ends. And so here's the thing. I want you to get this picture. This is a change of perspective that Jesus is trying to give them. In that moment, when Jesus dies on the cross, the followers of Jesus have lost their Savior, their Messiah. In that moment, the enemies of Jesus in this earth believe they have stopped a rebellion. They have halted a movement. Satan is dancing for joy, and he rubs it in our face. All of heaven is leaning in as they look down to earth, and the angels and those that have died before are looking back at God going, how can this be? And the only one that knows, God the Father, is sitting there going, wait for it. And in a state of hopelessness, the greatest sound that has ever broken silence happens. He breathed. And when he drew air back into his lungs, he drew hope back into the world. He put breath back into your body. He put hope back into you. And on that day that changed everything, when everyone thought that there was defeat, when he inhaled, everything changed. And here's what really happened. On that day, the cross freed us from our sin and death. Come on, can I get a good amen this morning? On that day, the veil of the temple, which was a place that was designed to keep average people away from the presence of God, was ripped top to bottom so that average people like you and me could always have access to God our Father. And on that day, come on now, y'all got to be awake for me this morning. Listen, on that day, Satan was defeated, death died, and heaven started to shout. On that day, emotions shifted in a way that they have never shifted before, and all of God's people partied, and the earth was filled with celebration and joy. On that one day, the impossible became possible. I don't think y'all are ready for Easter this morning. I'm just going to tell you that, okay? That happened in one day. These men are sitting there. They have no idea who's talking to them. They're listening to Jesus teach them about Jesus. They'd be like Tiger Woods teaching you how to putt. They'd be like Michael Jordan going, let's go shoot some hoops together. Let's work on your game. Like that would be like you going, my iPhone's broken, and Steve Jobs being like, here, I'll fix it. Let me take care of that. That'd be like you, like sitting there, like I can't help my kids with their math homework anymore because they do it all wrong. But even if they did it right, my sixth grader is about to do math this summer, which is what I ended high school with. My other two are more advanced, but imagine if Albert Einstein lived in our house. He'd be like, I could help you. I don't know what he sounded like. It'd be like Michelangelo painting your house. Jesus teaching about Jesus. The best of the best, teaching about the greatest thing ever. And as he did, their faith is deepened. And then here's what happens. He pretends that he's got to go farther than Emmaus. And they're like, no, come here. Come stay with us. Hang out for the night. Come have some dinner. We just want you to come inside. And let me tell you something. This is so important for us to get on Easter, please. Jesus always says yes when we invite him in. Yeah. And so he goes in with them. And in verse 30, it picks up. It says this. It was as he reclined at the table with them that he took the bread and blessed it and broke it, and he gave it to them. Then their eyes were open and they recognized him, but he disappeared from their sight. So they've walked 7 miles. They've listened to him talk. They haven't seen him, but in this moment, something changes. It's like this great illusion. Something is about to be revealed. I'm a magic nerd, and I watched a documentary on David Copperfield several months ago. And when I was watching it, there was this cool moment that happened. He did some great illusion, and this lady jumped up and she goes, David, tell us how you did it. And he looks back there and he goes, ma'am, I'm sorry, I would, but then I'd have to kill you. And then everybody went, ha, 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 ha. And she goes, no problem, tell my husband. And then everybody laughed even more. Jesus just did something, and they're going, wait, what just happened? What changed in this moment where they finally went, oh, we know who he is? I'll tell you what I think, and there's all kinds of theologians that will give you different interpretations. I'm going to give you my interpretation. There's a part in that verse where it says, he broke the bread and he gave it to them. We know because of his encounter with James, the holes were present in his hand. I think when he extended his arms to hand them bread, they went, it's you. And he went, surprise. Happy Easter. I've been here the whole time. And in the same way he was beamed into this conversation, God beams him out and goes to another place. And in this moment, he disappears. And what I love about this is what happens next. In verse 32, they didn't talk about him disappearing. They went straight to what he had been talking about. He says, weren't our hearts burning within us while he was talking with us on the road and explaining the scriptures to us? See, they had sensed something. And they didn't know what it was, but now they know. And you know what they do as it's coming night on a very difficult journey they've just made is they turn around and go back to Jerusalem. Do you know why? Because they've just seen Jesus and they know there's a city full of people that need to know hope is alive. Because here's the thing, hope will motivate you to go on a mission. Hope will motivate you into action. Hope will lead you to do something. And that's what we get of my favorite verse in this whole text. Verse 34, when they say this, it is true. The Lord is risen indeed. At 9 o'clock, I'm going to come out there and whip every one of y'all. If you're visiting with us today, we are not quiet church. This is, and listen, let me tell you something. If the story of Easter has become mundane and routine to you, you need to experience it again. Because I'm going to say this again. We'll rewind. I'll give you a second chance. It is true. The Lord is risen indeed. That. If we believe that, it changes everything. If we believe that, then that one day gives us power today that we have never been able to have, we would have never been able to have before. That one day not only gives us the power for our salvation, but that one day gives us the power today to say, I can forgive the person who cheated me out of my childhood. I can forgive the person who wrecked my marriage or took away my innocence. I can find power to stop gambling or using or lusting or spending. I can find hope after my divorce, after the diagnosis, after my unemployment. We celebrate today because one day impacts today. That's what we get from this. It's not just one day in the past, and it's not just hope for one day in the future. One day starts now. One day starts today. Your one day is empowered by that one day. And what I love about this is that you get to respond. We get to respond. In Easter, we are celebrating the resurrection of Jesus, but we are also celebrating our resurrection. Our hope. It's like my daughter Caitlin and I love to watch shows, and one of the shows, or one of the YouTube videos we watch all the time is America's Got Talent. I love, how many of you guys know what this is? The golden buzzer. If you've ever seen the videos, there's this moment where a judge will go like that, and then gold confetti will start flying everywhere. And you know in that moment that person on stage, in that moment, you see their reaction. They know what's happened. The audience knows what's happened. The judges know what's happened. Everyone knows that their life from that point on is never going to be the same again. And that's a talent show. On Easter, when Jesus erupts from his grave, that is God hitting the golden buzzer for you and for me and saying, if you accept this gift, your forever will be different. Your today can be different. You have hope that you didn't have. You have healing that you couldn't have. You have forgiveness that you couldn't have. Everything hinges on that moment where God gives your life hope and meaning and joy and purpose that you never had before. Yes. As our worship team comes up, I want to ask you and challenge you in something. Outside, there is a large sign that says 1. You may have noticed people writing on it as you came up. They were coming out of our 7:30 service. And I've asked people to respond by going out there and writing on that big board. And here's what I want you to write. Today, and then your sentence. I want every person in this room to make a commitment about something today. If you don't know Jesus, then the greatest thing you could do today is say, today, I accept and believe in Jesus Christ. And there is nothing that we would be more excited for you to write down. We want that for you. But for others of you, you know what else is real? Is that maybe you just needed today to be reminded that one day starts now. And maybe you're going to write out there, today, I believe I have the power to forgive. Today, I have hope for someone in my life that I thought was hopeless. Today, I believe that God has a plan for my life. Whatever your today statement is, let God speak to you about something today. You have power today. Power from God. And it started on that first Easter. And listen, when those guys realized what they had experienced, they went back 7 miles to tell everyone. And we want that for you. We want you to have something happen today that you would journey, go on mission to tell somebody else about. That's our desire for you. We're about to sing a song. It's one of my favorite Easter songs, been around for a few years now. And there's a part in it that says, you called my name and I ran out of that grave. That we ran out when he ran out.
Right.
And we're going to have a little golden buzzer moment just to help you. We want to help you feel that moment of celebration and victory in your life. And so when we get to that, I'm going to come up here and I'm going to hit this. And when I do, if there's going to be some loud noises, some popping sounds, because some confetti cannons are about to be shot all over you. And we don't do that to marginalize or trivialize or take away from today. We do that so that for a moment we could experience the victory in the day.
Amen.
And so we want you to be loud, and we want you to celebrate what God is doing in your life today.